Kate Mulafalcha, welcome to Irish Granny Helen. And thank you for being here. If you haven't lately, check your subscriptions. I have found that I'm missing a lot of content that my friends have been doing because somehow my subscriptions seem to have disappeared. So check that you're subscribed to here. Check you're subscribed to other people that you like and watch, because I have a little topic today that occurred to me about a week and a half ago. I got my information. Let me tell you where my sources were just before I forget. Wikipedia, God bless Wikipedia. And a couple of websites, one called Ancient Origins, one called the Encyclopedia Britannica, a little website you may have heard about, and the Universal Compendium, and a couple of other places that I looked at and they said the same thing. So I want to talk today about the Doge of Venice. Now, I have been asking around, and I was a little surprised that the word Doge is not as recognized as I kind of thought it was. So Doge, does that ring a bell? New, I don't know if I'd call it a government department, but it's a new group. And contemplating it one day, I was thinking, boy, I wonder if that acronym was intentionally chosen because of the history of the word Doge. So I thought I should look this up, because despite the fact that I recognized the word, I couldn't tell you much about it. I knew that Venice was a city-state. Italy was, not really Italy. Early on, after, well, how do I explain this? The Roman Empire didn't just, disappear one day. It was a process over quite a long time. And it split. And they had somebody in Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire was, and then the Holy Roman Empire, and they were. So under the auspices of that, there was imperial rule, but places were so scattered, and problems with tribes, wandering tribes, and just so many issues, distance and travel being a really important factor here. Places were isolated from each other. Communication wasn't good. There were no cell phones. There was no internet. There was internet. There was no getting on an airplane. There were no getting on superhighways. People were very isolated. In fact, for a very long time, until our modern time, most people didn't go beyond about 15-mile radius of their home where they were born. That gives one pause. So let's talk about the Doge of Venice. And I'll try not to jump around too much, but I wanted to look things up so we all had a context. So the Doge of Venice. Venice was called La Serenissima, or the Most Serene Republic of Venice. And this is after it became a republic. Venice was named for the ancient, it would be pronounced Veneti, but it looks like Veneti. These were the people the tribal people, maybe indigenous, maybe not, people who lived there about 10th century BCE, before Christ. It's in the area of northeast Italy. Italy looks like a boot. I'm sure everybody knows that at this point. It looks like a boot with its toe kicking in the Mediterranean and trying to kick Sicily out of the way. And the country itself, as I said, was not unified geopolitically. The city of Venice, but we'll call it a city, but it was more than a city, less than a state. It was a city-state. The city of Venice was built, interesting this, on 127 islands separated by an expanse of open sea and canals. The islands are all in a shallow body of water called the Venetian Lagoon, which is the area between two rivers, the Po River and the Piave River. And this formed kind of a more than a wetland, less than an ocean area. And they built on these islands that were not completely covered. They believe it, there's no 100% certainty, but they believe that it was begun by refugees from Germanic and Hun invasions in other parts of Europe. They moved south and ended up in northeast Italy. Most likely had been most of the people there had been there for a very long time. Even if they weren't refugees, there were people that were there that were called the Incolae Lacunae, or the lagoon dwellers, and these were native to the area and they were fishermen. So the founding of the city of Venice is dated from, of course, the first church, the first Catholic church that was built there, San Giacomo or San Giacomo, depending, that's built on the islet called the Rialto, which means the high shore, on the 25th of March, 421. Very early Catholic Church. The position of Doge. Now, Doge is started out as a job, an official job, like senator or mayor or alderman, but it eventually became synonymous with the person who filled the job. So the position of Doge rose from tribal chiefs, from the 12, what they called apostolic, 12 of them, apostolic families, who claimed that they had a direct lineage from the Roman Empire. The area had been disputed and part of the Byzantine Empire, which is the Eastern Roman Empire, as I said, headed in Constantinople. So here's just a little history because it's actually very interesting. In the early 5th century, so this is before the first church was built, in like the early 400s, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, and other barbarian tribes, they had captured all these separate pockets of area in northern Italy and, fought with each other. Ravenna, one of my favorite cities in the world. I'm proud to say I've actually been there. I've been nowhere, never even been to Baltimore, but I've been to Ravenna. And Ravenna is just replete with history. It is a beautiful place. It's a city in the northeast coast of the boot of Italy, and it had been the capital of the Ostrogoth kingdom. I didn't know that when I was there. I wish I'd known that. Part of the problem when you go to a country that speaks a different language, you go to museums, you go to displays of things, historical displays, it can get difficult to get a full sense of the story behind things, because if they're written in another language, and when I was there, it was before, you held your phone up to things and got everything you needed. You had to read it. So it was really kind of fun to try to figure out what things meant, but you do miss out on some information. So Ravenna was the capital of the Ostrogoth kingdom, and in the middle of the 6th century, so this is after the first church was built in Venice, the Emperor Justinian reconquered this whole area. He'd had enough of barbarian tribes. Justinian was a piece of work. If you want to read a very interesting history, read the history of Justinian and his wife, Theodora. Justinian was called the emperor who never sleeps because he was always on the go. You have to wonder what was going on with him. He totally rewrote Roman law to something called the Codex. He aggressively pursued the total destruction of paganism. He was committed to Christianity. And he married Theodora, who was an actress 20 years older than he. It was a huge scandal. She was older than he was. It was a huge, huge scandal because you know what they equated actresses with. Yes. There are stories I could repeat about Theodora that would just, you'd be clutching your pearls. But I can't because I can't say them out loud. I would recommend you look into that. Justinian reasserted Roman control of this whole area of northern Italy. He's famous for, oh, I must be recording because my dogs are barking. I apologize. He's famous for his patronage of architecture. He loved a good building, and his influence is all over Ravenna. Now, I was under the mistaken belief that he actually at one point lived in Ravenna, but I looked it up last night and apparently he didn't, but he sent emissaries. So that, you know, I don't speak Italian. That's the problem. Anyway, he was responsible for the building of the Basilica of San Vitale. San Vitale was actually begun as I believe it was begun as an early Christian church under the Ostrogoths. And when you look at this building, you can tell it's very early Christian because it has round, I don't know what the term for it is, but there's a round part of the church. Whenever we saw a building that had that, you know, like a public church building that had that round feature, like almost like a tower, but not really, we would go, oh, this is going to be worth looking at because it's really old. So it was begun by the Ostrogoths, and it was built over a pagan spring. And when you go into this church, the spring is still inside the church, only it's been tiled and the whole area has been turned into, looks like a beautiful, gigantic foot bath. And it's called a baptistry. It's where they did the Christian baptisms. It's one of the best preserved examples of Byzantine architecture, early Christian architecture, and the mosaics inside are some of the best examples of Byzantine art in the world, but certainly outside Constantinople. And it is breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking. It's not huge. No, it's not. It's called a basilica. The basilica, it's from the word that means the seat of the bishop. It doesn't mean big, gigantic church. They're not all huge. And this one is not huge, but it's very, very impressive. Okay. That dog likes her food. That's what's going on. My husband is making them something to eat and she's losing her mind. Anyway, Justinian established okay, I can't read my handwriting. That's an E. Justinian established what's called the prefecture of Provincia Italia, the province of Italy. That was a confederation of cities governed by the empire from a distance through local representatives called prefects, and Venice was one of them. So here's where we're starting to get the influence. This entire network of cities, I think there were 7 roughly of them, was known as the Exarchate of Ravenna. Exarchate means the rule from outside of Ravenna. And in Ravenna was the representative of the emperor and the guy that stood for the government in Constantinople. So Venice was one of these cities. Now they needed somebody in authority. And in Venice, the guy that was put in charge of this was the Doge, and he was the highest authority in Venice. While we read this, I want you to pay attention to some really interesting parallels to today. So the word Doge comes from the Latin, because doesn't everything, comes from the Latin dux, D-U-X, meaning leader. It's where we get the word duke, like Duke of Earl, dux, D-U-X. And it was originally a title. This is not the name of a person. It's the name of the title. And it had military implications. It was the head of the expeditionary forces that were authorized to conduct operations outside provincial boundaries. So these guys had military carte blanche to act as representatives militarily for the emperor. They have what I wrote down is they have this insectile coat of arms that looks like a Roomba swallowed a metallic spider, and I have been trying for 2 days to figure out how to get it off the website and into my computer here. Never mind. I think I might be able to do it when I use the iPad. I'm more comfortable with that. So I won't promise, but I'm going to try to publish it with the community page. And I will give a little caveat. The particular coat of arms that I really want to put up there for you is only one of many. Each Doge had his own special coat of arms that had meaning, and they were kind of a sigil. A sigil is it's like a symbol, but it's a combination of symbols that all mean something together. So I wrote here that this next information may ring some bells and fly some red flags. So the Doge was the head of the Venetian oligarchy and the head of state. The Doge was elected for life. Alert, alert. The first Doge was elected in 698. Each Doge through the centuries adopted, this is my words, ever-changing and unpronounceable titles that were intended to reinforce authority, or less commonly, humility. So they would be given, each title was granted by the emperor and Dei gratia, by the grace of God. However, they each had little mottos with their titles. It would be the Doge, the humble and authoritative this and that, and each of them was a little different depending on how much in favor or out of favor you were with the emperor on that particular day. As I said, it came from dux, D-U-X, which means leader in Latin, and the original title was actually D-O-U-X, which is derived from the Latin, and this title belonged to the office, not to the man, and other additional titles were given or edited based on who the individual was and what the geopolitics of his rule were at the moment. So as a result, many Doge had, little pun here, Byzantine titles. They actually had titles from the Byzantine Empire, but they also had complicated, bizarre titles. But the Doge of Venice, in general, ruled several federated areas. His influence extended, depending on the politics, to annex most of northeast Italy, Istria, Dalmatia. Dalmatia is like Yugoslavia, that area. The coasts of modern-day Montenegro and Albania, the Adriatic and Ionian Islands. At its height, so between the 13th and the 16th century, we're talking 1200s to 1500s, getting on into the Renaissance, medieval times, Renaissance. The Doge of Venice ruled Crete, Cyprus, and the Peloponnese, which were the Eastern Mediterranean islands and area. In 1204 AD, as history progressed, he was also considered the lord of 1.25 of the Empire of Romania after the Fourth Crusade. The Fourth Crusade was in 1204. The title was usually given to one member of the inner circle of those 12 apostolic families, the founding families, allegedly, of Venice. Founding families, never mind the natives. That ought to sound familiar as well. They claimed that they were the direct descendants of the Roman Empire, and at first this position was sometimes passed from father to son. But this bothered people, it worried people, and to prevent a hereditary monarchy from developing, a law was passed that said a Doge could not name his successor. So after 1172, the Doge was elected. Now, there's this advanced PhD level math that goes on here to figure out how to elect the Doge. And I'm gonna belabor it a little bit because it's hilarious, and I actually did the Doge math. So wait till you hear this. This ought to sound familiar to another system of electing people. So 12 people, one from each of these families every year, nominated the Great Council. The Great Council then chose 4 members. So these 4 members chose 40 candidates, like a private ballot. And these 40 candidates became what was called the Committee of the 40. The Committee of the 40 became the Committee of the 41 after there was a deadlock in 1229 and they couldn't resolve it. Between 1268 and 1797, these rules applied to minimize the influence of any one great family. And they are arcane. They are labyrinthine. It's a Gordian knot of elections. It's bizarre. So very complex electoral system is what the book said, the website said, and I thought, boy, is that an understatement. So of the Great Council, 30 were chosen out of that group by lot. By lot, that group of 30 was reduced to 9. These 9 chose 40 by lot. Out of that group of 40, 12 were chosen by lot. Those 12 chose 25 by lot, and that was reduced to 9 by lot. I don't know if they drew straws or what, but the 9 elected 45, so not drawn from a pot, but elected 45, and this was reduced by lot to 11. The 11 chose the 41, and these 41 elected the Doge. So this is the Doge math. 30 minus 21 equals 9, and they chose 40. 40 minus 28 equals 12, and they chose 25. 25 minus 16 equals 9, and they elected 45. 45 minus 34 equals 11, and they chose 41. And these 41 elected 1. But wait, there's more. The Doge needed to get 25 minimum out of 41 votes. 9 minimum out of 11 or 12, depending on which round it was, and 7 out of 9. I have no idea how long this must have taken. I could not get a lot of details. There must be books out there. But it brings to mind the new movie called Conclave. I highly recommend this movie. This is such an interesting movie, and it's especially germane given the fact that the Pope is, I'm sorry to say, is dying. He may rally, but I don't know. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned about what that means. Like, who's next? We'll talk about that at another time. But in the meantime, the movie Conclave is about the election of a pope, and it sounds awful. I almost didn't watch it because, like, why would I want to watch that? It's fabulous. It's very, very good. So the oath, the final oath, was not administered to this last chosen guy, the Doge, until he was presented to the whole group, and they are told, this is your Doge if it pleases you. And if it doesn't please them, they start all over. And then in 1423, they got a little less democratic about it and said, "You're Doge." So at first he had enormous power, but in 1268 they began to do strict surveillance of the Doge. Now I searched for an explanation of this. I think I might have found the answer, but I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to speculate here. So in 1268 they began a strict surveillance of the Doge. For example, he had to have others present in the room, others approved of in the room, before opening any mail from foreign powers. Now, I asked myself, what happened in 1268 that would start? I found something. April 4th of 1268, Venice signed a peace treaty with the Byzantine Empire. I don't know why they weren't at peace, but they signed a 5-year peace treaty. So the implication maybe would be they didn't feel they could trust him to not go behind their backs and break the treaty to his own advantage. I don't know. It's before Machiavelli. I don't know. Anyway, the Doge was a lifetime appointment, but a few were forcibly removed, and I tried really hard to find out who they were and what they did, and I couldn't find it. So the end of the Doge system was gradual because of the growth of rival powers and because of new trade routes. But the piece of resistance, as they say, the pièce de résistance in 1797, young General Napoleon Bonaparte was sent by the new French Republic to storm Venice and claim it. And he ended 1,100 years of reign, of autonomous reign. The last Doge who abdicated at this point in 1797 was Ludovico Man, and he died of natural causes in 1802. At this point, because of Bonaparte and geopolitics, Venice fell under the influence of the Habsburg monarchy. And the rest, as they say, is history. So I will try to remember to put the coat of arms up for you. And in the meantime, that's all I know about the Doge. But isn't that an interesting little historical context? So please subscribe. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed to other people too, because I've been talking, we talk amongst ourselves. And there's been some shenanigans, let's just say. And do thumbs up. And if you have questions for Ask Your Irish Granny, send them to my email, irishgrannyhelen@gmail.com. And any other consultations, I am available. In the meantime, thank you very much for your guys' support. Thank you to everybody who joined the membership. 99 cents, cheap at half the price. I did it for the illusion of privacy, not to make life hard on everybody. Check out my Substack. I tried to write something a little uplifting and funny that's timely, about once a week. And, you don't have to go behind the paywall there if you don't want to. I understand. And I'm on probation again, 90 days. And so I will be putting some things on Substack and not even, I got in trouble for something we did behind the paywall. So apparently it's not enough of a protection. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Slán go fóill. Slán.